Hello, my name is Ellen Wayne, and welcome to the Freetown Village Storytime, brought to you by Freetown Village, the Penrod Society, the Blue River Press, and our partners at the Center for Black Literature and Culture. The book that I'm going to read from today is All About Madam C.J. Walker, written by Lilia Bundles and illustrated by Kirsten Halvorsen. Madam C.J. Walker was one of the most successful American businesswomen of the early 20th century. She is remembered as an entrepreneur and a pioneer of the modern hair care industry. She has made her mark as a philanthropist. That's someone who donates money to a cause that they believe in. She is a patron of the arts, meaning she participated and supported music and dancing and theater. She was also a political activist who spoke out against racial injustice. Let me tell you a little story about the person we know today as Madam C.J. Walker. Madam Walker had a very humble beginning. When she was born, her name was Sarah Breedlove. And she and her family lived in a one-room cabin on a plantation in Delta, Louisiana. She was born in 1867, 2 years at the end of the Civil War. She was born on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. She was the firstborn in her family, freeborn. Both of her parents, Owen and Minerva Breedlove, died before she was 7 years old, leaving her and her sister and her 4 brothers orphans. Young Sarah had to move in with her older sister, Lavinia, and her husband, Jesse, in Vicksburg, Mississippi. There, she learned to wash clothes to earn money. Life with her sister and brother-in-law was not easy. To have a chance to have a home of her own and to be happy, she married Moses McWilliams at the age of 14 years old. When Sarah was 17, they had a daughter, and they named her Lilia. Lilia's father died a few years after she was born. In 1888, Sarah and Lilia got on a steamboat and moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where Sarah's older brothers lived and worked as barbers. Sarah worked as a laundress for many years and made very little money, but she was determined to give her daughter more opportunities than she had had. She met and married a man named John Davis. Her life was marred with little money, poor nutrition, and a difficult marriage with John Davis. She was losing her hair. She had severe scalp infections and was desperate for a cure for her bald spots. Sarah and Lilia joined the St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church and met some very kind women in the church who helped them adjust to city life. Sarah never forgot their generosity. Their example for her became a model for her life and her own philanthropic. She met a woman named Annie Malone Pope Turnbull, later known as Annie Malone, who had a business of making and selling hair care products. And sure enough, Sarah's hair stopped breaking off and falling out. Sarah began to work for Annie and soon became one of her best sales agents. While in St. Louis, Sarah met a man named Charles Joseph Walker, who sold newspaper subscriptions and advertising. He went by the name C.J. When Sarah moved to Denver, Colorado, she began to experiment with her own formulas. She often said that her formulas came to her in a dream after she prayed for a solution. But she also took advice from others until she finally came up with the right combination. Charles Joseph C.J. joined her in Denver to help her with advertising. They were married, and she took on the title Madam, as many in the hair care business did, and began calling herself Madam C.J. Walker. She also began selling an ointment called Madam Walker's Wonderful Hair Grower that became very popular. She continued to experiment and increase her product line. In 1908, she opened Lilia's College of Beauty Culture in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in order to train sales agents to use her products. 2 years later, in 1910, she moved to Indianapolis, where she built a factory in her home on West Street. By 1911, her business was already so successful that she was able to make a $1,000 contribution for a new building here in Indianapolis called the Young Men's Christian Association, better known as the YMCA. Madam gave lots of money to many different causes, other businesses, and educational institutions, including Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, where Booker T. Washington was the school's founder. One day, Madam Walker went to the Isis Theater in downtown Indianapolis to see a movie. Instead of the usual 10 cents admission like the white patrons, the theater agent charged her 25 cents because she was African American. This enraged Madam, inspired her to build her own theater where African American people would not be cheated out of their hard-earned money. Madam moved to Harlem, New York in 1916 and became involved in political activities and anti-lynching campaigns, including the NAACP, which stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. During this time, many Black men and women were unlawfully targeted and lynched by white mobs. Madam developed an international business with customers all over the United States, Central America, and the Caribbean. She provided jobs for African American women that paid more than that being a maid or a laundress or farm workers. Women were able to work for themselves and make a lot of money with a lot more pride and independence. Madam built a mansion near the Hudson River in 1918. She named her mansion the Villa Lowell, after the first two letters of her daughter's first and last names, L-E for Lilia, W-A for Walker, and R-O for Robinson. By then, Lilia had married a man named John Robinson. Throughout her life, she provided jobs and dreams for hundreds of African American women. Her poor health, poor nutrition, and lack of rest and relentless work ethic took a toll on her body. She died in 1919 at the age of 51, leaving a legend of philanthropy and generosity. Today, her legacy is preserved through the National Historic Landmarks of the Villa Lowell. It's a mansion in Irvington, New York, and the Madam Walker Theater here in Indianapolis, which opened in 1927, 8 years after the passing of its namesake. In 1998, she became the 21st African American to be featured in the United States Postal Service Black Heritage Series of postal stamps. More than a century after she founded her company, the Madam C.J. Walker Beauty Culture line of products is manufactured in Sundial brands and sold throughout the United States. At the root of Madam's success was her belief in her high quality products, her gift for marketing, and her ability to lead and inspire others. For more information about the amazing life of Madam Walker, I encourage you to read All About Madam C.J. Walker and On Her Own Ground. Both of these were researched and written by Madam's great-great-granddaughter, Amelia Bundles. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the Penrod Society, the Blue River Press, and our partners at the Center for Black Literature and Culture for making this story time possible. Be sure to share this story with your friends. And parents, please remember that Freetown Village outreach programs are made possible with additional supporters like you. Thank you for spending time with me today. Bye-bye for now.